Hello again, guys. Today we're going to take a look at adding and subtracting positive and negative fractions and mixed numbers. So I just want to review the rules for fractions. In this one, if you've forgotten how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers, you can go back, you can rewatch those videos from the first unit. So to add or subtract fractions, and I talked about this some in some of our previous videos, we need a common denominator. We need to have the same size pieces when we're adding or subtracting fractions. So how do we add or subtract them? We rewrite the equivalent fractions using our LCD, least common denominator, and then we add or subtract the numerators depending on what it's asking us to do, and we keep the denominator for our answer. The denominator doesn't change, okay? So make sure that you get all those notes down. Remember, you can always pause it. And I have a couple boards where we'll do some examples here. All right, so we have a lot of different things. You'll notice the math is building on itself. We're taking what we've learned and we're adding new concepts into it. So again, remember, go back, rewatch the videos. If you're struggling, it'll help you out. So the first thing we want to do is come up with our least common denominator. And again, if you've forgotten how to do that, go back and rewatch the videos. I'm going to tell you right now it's 16. I'm not going to show you that work. That's a previous video you can rewatch. So the first thing I'm just going to do is I'm going to rewrite my fractions here. 16 didn't change. That's still 5/16. 8 goes into 16 twice, so 5 times 2 is 10. Now I notice I'm adding, they're both negative, so I'm adding the same sign, which means I'm going to add the 2 and keep the sign for my answer. So my answer is going to be negative 5 plus 10 is 15. I keep my denominator. There's no need to reduce. This is already in its simplest form right there. All right. So again, first thing I want to do over here is rewrite this using a common denominator. I notice that my LCD is 15 here. So this did not change. This is still 4/15. I multiplied 5 by 3 to get 15. 3 times 3 is 9. Now what you'll notice is I'm adding two numbers that have opposite signs, a positive and a negative. So if you'll recall, that means I'm going to wind up subtracting the two numbers and keeping the sign of the larger absolute value. So 9 is bigger than 4, so I'm going to do my subtraction this way. 9 minus 4 is 5. Keep the 15ths. Now, my larger value, and this goes back to comparing our fractions, 9/15 is bigger. In our original problem, that was a positive number, so that means my answer is positive. However, I'm not done here because 5/15 is not in its simplest form. It has a factor that goes into both 5 and 15, which is 5. So I'm going to divide the top by 5, and I'm going to get 1. Hang on, let me just slide this over a little bit so I have room for this. Sorry, guys. All right. So if I divide 5 by 5, I get 1. If I divide 15 by 5, I get 3. So my answer in its simplest form is positive 1/3. We need to make sure we're remembering to reduce our fractions. Here you notice I'm now dealing with mixed numbers. Now when we're adding them, we can add the mixed number and then add the fraction separately. But sometimes we have to carry and convert depending on if our fraction winds up being greater than 1. So the first thing I notice, they have the same sign, which means I'm going to do addition. These are both negative, so my answer is going to be negative. So right now I'm going to ignore my whole numbers. I'm just going to rewrite my fractions right now. 8 and 12 have a common denominator of 24. 8 times 3 gave me 24, so I need to multiply the 15 by 3. 12 times 2 gave me 24, so I'll multiply my 7 by 2. Again, I said I'm going to add these, so right now I'm just going to focus on the fraction, just looking at the fraction. 14 plus 15 gives me 29/24. So you notice what we have here is an improper fraction. This is more than 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this as its mixed number, which is 1 and 5/24. And 5/24 can't be reduced. That's in its simplest form. Now I'm going to go back, and I want to look at all my whole numbers. And remember, these are both negative. I'm not writing those signs over. I'm just remembering my answer is going to be negative. So I don't have to keep rewriting those signs. Just remember that on my answer, it needs to be there. So now I'm going to look at my whole numbers. I have 1, a 3, and a 2. So I'm going to add all of those together. 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Keep my leftover fraction and 15/24. And again, I said, remember, we were adding two numbers that were both negative, so my answer then needs to keep its negative sign. All right, So it's kind of a step-by-step that you can do it. The other thing you could do is you could convert them into improper fractions, but then you start dealing with really big numbers. So I find it easier to do it this way. And then you can just rename as you need to. All right, so if we look over here, here what I notice is I'm actually going to wind up doing subtraction because I have a positive and a negative. So let's keep that in mind. Now here I have to look at the whole number as well as the fraction because I might need to borrow when I'm subtracting. So the larger absolute value is the 6 7/10. So I'm actually going to write that first over here. 6 7/10. I'm going to wind up subtracting the smaller one. Well, my common denominator is 10, so I'm going to rewrite this with its equivalent fraction. Keep my 1, 5 goes into 10 twice, so 3 times 2 is 6/10. Okay, luckily here I don't have to do any borrowing because 7 minus 6 is 1/10. 6 minus 1 is 5. Now, if this had been a larger number, what we'd had to have done is we'd have had to borrow 1 from here, and I think we might have an example like that on one of these boards, so we'll go over that. But we talked about that last year as well. Then we go back. This was my larger number, the 6. That was negative in the original, so that means my answer needs to be a negative. Negative 5 1/10. All right? Those are all the addition ones. Now we'll review the subtraction ones as well. The good thing about subtraction is it also reviews addition rules because remember, whenever we're subtracting, we change it to an addition problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this as adding the additive inverse. All right? Change the minus to a plus, change the sign of your second number. I'm now adding two numbers that have opposite signs. The reason I did this is because once I convert these into their common denominators, you're going to find that your second number becomes larger than your first. This is why I rewrote it as adding my additive inverse, because then I can remember my rules. My rules tell me now to take the absolute values, which I've written here, and subtract them. So 8 minus 7 is 1. Keep my denominator, 1/10. Then I need to know what my sign is going to be. 8 was my bigger value. In my original problem, that became the negative number, so my answer is negative 1/10. So you'll notice we're keeping a lot in our head. We have to remember our fraction rules, we have to remember our integer rules, and it is a lot. So remember, first thing we're doing here, change this to addition by adding our additive inverse. I'm adding two fractions that have the same sign, so that means my answer is going to wind up being a negative number. Because you'll notice I don't copy it over when I'm writing rewriting my equivalent fractions. I should, but I just keep it in my head what my answer is going to be. So this didn't change, 11/20. 10 goes into 20 twice. 2 times 2 is 4. Now remember, we're adding these because they're like signs, but my answer is going to be negative. I didn't write the negatives there, they're still there. 4 plus 11 is 15. Keep my denominator. However, I'm not done because 15/20 is not in its simplest form. These are both divisible by 3. Keep my negative. Sorry, not 3, 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 5 goes into 20 4 times. So my answer is negative 3/4. All right, again, first thing I want to do, add the additive inverse. Now I'm just adding two positive numbers. You've done this plenty of times. So I'm going to rewrite this in its equivalent form. 10ths is my common denominator. 2/5 becomes 4/10. When I add these, I get 1 7/10. Nothing to rename there. Nice and easy. Okay, over here you'll notice again, we're going to change it to addition by adding my additive inverse. Now I'm adding two numbers that have opposite signs. So I'm actually going to wind up subtracting. I'm going to subtract the smaller from the larger. So the 3 is going to be bigger, so I'm going to write it on this side. I'm going to rewrite this using a common denominator. Between 6 and 4 is 12, not 24. 24 is a common denominator. It's not the least common denominator. 6 goes into 12 2 times, so that's 10/12. Over here, I've got 4 goes into 12 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. So here I've got 3 and 10/12 minus 1 and 9/12. So I'll look at my whole numbers. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. Sorry, read and think. 10 minus 9, I was getting ahead of myself. 10 minus 9 is 1, keep my denominator. 2 and 1, 12. Now I need to determine what the sign of my answer should be. 3 was my larger one. It was originally negative, so my answer is also negative. So those are the ways to do that. Like I said, it's just keeping all of your rules in your mind. Again, feel free to go back, rewatch any of the videos that you need to help you out with that. Questions can go in the comment box on your quizzes or the online quiz you take, or email them to me. I'll go over those in class for you. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.